And we are live. Traders, welcome back to the first and pilot episode of why system development is key in trading. Now, today I'm joined by a very special guest who's going to introduce himself in just one moment. But before we get into that, why are we bringing you this series? Well, at 𝗶𝗶𝗶, we are very, very big on our traders developing their own personal relationship with the markets and, in a way, building their own system that suits them the best. Now, having rules and having a system in which you base your trading strategy around is essential if you want to last in the markets, if you want to be consistently profitable in the long term. And this series from start to finish will help you build a system and give you the formula that you need to take to go and build a fully fledged system where you can attack the market, extract some pips, and be profitable in the long term. As I mentioned, I'm joined by a very, very special guest. Cas, introduce yourself, my friend.
What's up everyone, my name is 𝗶𝗶𝗹. I'm from the Netherlands, 24 years old, and I'm the owner of CDFX Trading, which is all about personal attention and coaching traders one-on-one and help them to develop their own trading edge. I've been trading for around 5 years now. I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. I started off as a discretionary trader and I quickly found out that I needed more structure. And that's when I got into system development and gathering statistics. And to this day, I'm still working on developing even further. Even though I'm profitable, I think you're never finished when building an edge. I even believe that if you have an edge and you stop working on it, you will lose your edge. So that's why I'm very passionate about it. That's why we wanted to do this series, and I'm very excited for it.
As am I, Cas. It's good to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me. I will say, me and Cas, we get on like Batman and Robin because we both had a very, very similar journey, right? Where we both come from this place of very discretionary, from very trading by feel kind of territory, and progressing over time to have a more systematic and literally black and white approach to the markets. And there's so many different ways why that is so important, which is why I think we should get into the first slide. Are you ready, Cas?
Hell yeah.
All good. Let's get going. Right. So, first slide, I'm sorry to say we've got a bit of a disclaimer. Cas, I'll save you and I'll read this one out for you. Trading, as we all know, carries a high level of risk. You can potentially lose all your money if you're not prepared. Do not trade with money you cannot afford to lose. That's a big one, guys. You should be aware of all the risks regarding trading. The information in this video is for informational purposes only. The information is not any form of investment advice to be relied upon by users. Trade at your own discretion. Past performance does not guarantee future performance. That's the disclaimer out of the way. That's the legality out of the way. Now we can get into the meat of it. Why system development is key in trading. Let's go to the next slide. So let's start with, maybe Cas, if you want to chime in here, table of contents. This is what we're going to cover in this episode and what you can expect to learn in this episode. Let's start breaking this down. What is system development? Cas, all yours.
Yeah, so first we're going to talk about what is system development. I think that some people will have a bit of an idea about it, but usually this will be a shallow view and we really want to be in depth about it so you guys know what system development is about and how you can use it in your own trading.
That's it. So that's covered. What is system development? We're going to go into more detail. As Cas says, there might be some sort of idea in your mind what that is, but all going to be revealed very shortly. Next one. I'll take care of this one. What are the benefits of system development? We've got a whole slide dedicated to this later on about what you can expect to be the benefits and how it will go on and improve your trading. Next line, what happens if you don't develop a system? Again, the opposite. What's going to happen to you and what is the problems that me and Cas have found within our own trading at the start of our trading journeys? Cas, how do I approach system development? How are we going to cover that later?
Well, in this slide, we're basically going to talk about how you can approach it, what the right way is to approach system development, and what you need to look out for, because there are some things you need to remember when you are going to develop your system.
Right. And last but not least, we've got a recap and preview. At the end of this episode, we're going to recap everything we've gone through. So stick around to the very end to really get a best picture of exactly what we're talking about today. And we'll give you a little bit of a preview to the next episode. Now, I think the next button is in fact the next slide. All right, so now you've seen the table of contents, what we're going to cover this episode. Let's talk about, quite simply, what is system development. Now, I'm going to take care of the first point. I think Kat will take the second. Developing a clear edge. Now, I think Cass would agree when I say, like, an edge can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people in the market. But to me, an edge, quite simply, is a way that gives you an advantage over the average trader. Now, in life in general, let me tell you something. If you want to have results unlike anybody else, if you want to live a certain quality of life, if you want to have a certain level of success, you need to do things that other people aren't prepared to do. Now, it's for you to decide what that is. But there's a reason why the majority of traders in the markets are unprofitable. Because a lot of them aren't prepared to put the work in and aren't prepared to stick at something long enough to see it work in the long run. Now, myself, I can vouch personally, so can Cass, that if you stick to this and actually commit yourself to building a system, it's not easy sometimes. You have to really stick with it. And it's a long process that me and Cass are still actually on. We're still building our systems out, and they're far from perfect, but they're profitable. That's the main thing. That is how you develop your edge, by doing things that other traders aren't prepared to do. And in this context, I mean building a fully fledged system that allows you to be consistent in the markets. Cass, what does an edge mean to you? Just whilst we're on the topic, because I know it can vary from trader to trader.
To me, the edge means the statistics are in your favor, and how you do that is totally up to you. Everyone is different. Everyone has a different approach. The bottom line is that the statistics need to be in your favor. And in my opinion, when developing a system, it's the easiest way to figure out if the numbers are in your favor. So that's why I think it's very important to start with system development, and that's also why we started this series.
That's it. Right, second point. Set rules and parameters a trade needs to meet before execution. That's what a system is, guys. You can call it an algorithm, you can call it a formula, but fundamentally, rules and parameters that a trade needs to meet. Perhaps it means that the candle has crossed over a moving average, or that an indicator is telling you to do something, or there's a certain amount of volume in the markets. Or it could be something like, one of your parameters could be that there isn't any news events coming up for that pair. It's really up to you to decide what those rules and parameters are, but that is the nature of a system in and of itself. And I think the word rules and I think the word parameters makes you think back to your school days and being told to do something. But understand that if you want a certain level of consistency in your trading and a certain level of longevity and being consistently profitable in the long term of the next 5, 10, however long your trading career is going to be in terms of years, that is where rules and parameters come in. Cass, I know that you've obviously got your own selection of rules and your own selection of parameters within your trading.
Yep.
Do you cover things like candlestick patterns, or are you more of like a certain indicator type of thing, or how discretionary are we talking when it comes to like your indicators and the rules you follow?
I started off 100% mechanical and based on price action, so I don't use any indicators. It's all black and white rules about a certain candlestick pattern, which I developed over the years. It's around the same concepts I used back in the day, which was discretionary, and I really liked the concept, so I built a system around it. But it's all based on price action.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool. So I think what we're going to do now, actually, to help you sort of understand, whoever's watching this at home, what system development actually means to us, is we're going to jump on the charts, we're going to show you exactly what we're talking about, and then we're going to progress to the next slide.
So we are at MT4 right now, and on the chart I basically want to talk a bit about how I tested my system and how you can test a very basic system. And it all starts with establishing rules, which we will get more into in later sessions, but I wanted to give you a small example. Let's say, for example, you trade the inside day failure. It's a simple candlestick pattern. It's all about breaking one side of an inside day. So this is an inside day, which means it's inside the range within the previous day. Then one side breaks and it closes back within the range. That's an inside day. So you write down those rules on an Excel sheet or on paper, but you do need these clear rules when you're going to develop your system. The way I did it is I did it manually. I have a FIB tool. Let's say your rule is to enter on the close of the daily candle, which is the BE, break even, and then your target would be over here, the 1, which means 1R, so it's the same distance as your stop loss. And that's how you can very easily test a system. So start with making rules around the concept. So the concept behind this is basically a false breakout of the highs and then a breakout to the other side. But that's how you can very easily develop a system. So start with your concept, write down rules, and then go to your MT4 or whatever platform you use, and then go from there.
Cool. I think it's really important to mention, like, you've obviously made an example there of the inside day failure. I get that. That's not something I've actually studied. That's interesting. That's something I've never studied myself. That's something I need to look into. But
yeah, it's very profitable in the gold.
Gold. Okay,
yeah.
Gold is one of my favorite things to trade, actually. So that's something I need to look into. But bearing that in mind, guys, please bear in mind this is just an example. These rules can be more or less anything you want. You can rely on indicators for a rule you need to follow. It might be candlestick patterns. It might be Fibonacci. It might even be something like a trend line. You just got to test it, and if you can measure it, if you can know how successful it is over the course of 100 trades, that is where you're going to make progression as a trader.
So let's take a look at one of my spreadsheets. It's one of the spreadsheets I use in my trading actively. I'm not going over all the rules I use to backtest this because that will be giving away my system for free, which I won't be doing. But as you can see, it's filled with a lot of data. I basically went back over more than 10 years. I got 172 samples. And I basically backtested my rules. And as you can see, after testing, I knew there is around a 60% chance of making 1R when this certain pattern happens on a daily time frame. Now, this information can be very, very useful if you're going to trade, and that's the power of developing a system. So you know what you can expect based on years and years of data. If we are going to look at the lower end of the spreadsheet, you will see two graphs, which is the equity graph of the past 10 years of trading this setup without doing anything, without adding any discretion, etc. This would be the results. But I want to very quickly talk about a few points I've written down here. From trade 62 towards 83, there has been made zero profit and only drawdown. So that's this area. And this strategy has a 60% win rate. It's just a one pair, but a 60% win rate, and you can still be in a drawdown for over 20 trades. And that's something you need to realize. And I think that's very powerful if you're developing a system, because I know what to expect. Let's say for the next year, I'm in a very big drawdown for 20 trades. I look back at my statistics. I know, okay, this has happened in the past, and I'm not freaking out or making any emotional mistakes. And that's where the point of confidence really, really comes in.
Interesting. Yeah, it's good. Do you know what? I don't have my spreadsheet for backtesting. Maybe we'll show it on a later episode, because I think one spreadsheet is enough for one episode. But it looks a bit different to this. But I like the fact that you plotted in a graph there. It looks like a really solid performance. How many years did you say this was over?
This was over around 10 years. I started in the end of 2008.
And this is just on one currency pair or a few of them? Or
this is the euro dollar only. I trade.
So if you think about this across, what is it, 27, 28 currency pairs? If you think about it like that, if you could, obviously you've got this win rate on that currency pair. Obviously each currency pair is going to behave a bit differently to your system. But imagine the possibilities if you're applying this strategy across all of those currency pairs in the markets. Pretty crazy stuff.
Yep, for sure.
Cool. Right, let's jump back into the presentation and we'll crack on with the rest of this session. So, back again, let's move on with the presentation. What are the benefits of building a system? So let's break this down for you. So, I'm going to go chime in with the first one. I think Kath will take care of the second. More consistency and certainty. Now, basically, what we mean by this is if you have a consistent set of variables and a consistent set of rules and parameters you need to follow within your system itself, it means that you can compare results from previous weeks of trading in the knowledge, like a scientific experiment, of the variables being kept the same. So if you've changed one setting on your indicator and now you're performing much better, then you know that there's something, to pursue there, something of interest to you. But when you're trading by feel and you're trading by the way the market looks, having no consistent rules that you follow, doesn't even have to be indicators, price action rules if you like, engulfing bearish candles, for example, almost got there. Other things like this, it's up to you to build out what those rules are. But what is true of rules in general is rules are rules. They're uniform, they're consistent across the board. And that means your results are being more consistent. And it's going to give you more certainty of the result. When you know that if a trade is meeting these parameters, I can be sure or be certain that there's a higher probability of me winning than if I just traded by feel. So that's what more certainty and consistency means to me. What do you think about that, Cass?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And you need some form of consistency in your process, in your rules, in the way you trade, or otherwise it will be very, very difficult to make any profits.
That's it. Second point, defining your edge. We've already spoke about edge and how it sort of can be defined as having that advantage over the average trader. But when you have a system and you have developed your edge because you know what works, a system allows you to really build on that and double down on what's working and remove what isn't in that way. I feel like as traders, we like to complicate things sometimes, but having a very systematic and data-driven statistical approach to things. How many wins did I have this week? How many pips did I make this week? When I changed the setting on my indicator, when I've done something slightly differently, when I've had a different nature of how I place my take profits and stop losses. You know, how does it affect my trades if I take my stops to break even at a certain point? Having these consistent rules means that you can really double down on the results when they're winning, when you're making profit, when you're making progress in your trading account, and of course, removing some of the stuff that doesn't work. Then we're going to move swiftly on to the third point. Cass, take this one away from me, will you?
Clarity and confidence. Yes, these two points are also very important and are huge benefits when you're building a system. So first of all, clarity. Now, everyone knows you can basically buy and sell at any given time you want. And a lot of people are just opening their MT4 in the morning, looking at certain areas, drawing some lines, and then enter a trade. There's no real clear process in doing this. But when you're developing your system, you know exactly what you need to look for. So you're not opening up MT4 and drawing some lines. No, you know exactly what you need to look for. The opportunity jumps to you. You're not jumping into the market. And that's one benefit. The other one is confidence. And without confidence, you can't be following your system. It's that simple, because even if your win rate is 80%, 70%, you will have losing streaks. And if you don't have confidence in your system, if you don't know what your edge is and why it works, then you won't be trading through these drawdowns, and it will be very, very hard to make money.
And I think it's a great point you just made. And I think having that level of confidence in your system is great. I mean, look at sport, for example. If you come onto the football pitch in knowing that you've trained for many, many years and you developed a very successful and winning strategy on the pitch, you're going to play better. You're going to play better in the knowledge that you have put the work in and you deserve a certain level of consistency and certainty in the result. Nothing is guaranteed in the markets, but where we can, we need to put the odds in our favor. If we can just increase our win rate by 1% through changing one part of our system, that is massive for your bottom line. Especially if you're taking, 10 trades a month, it's going to add up very, very quickly. And ultimately, if you can figure out a way to reduce those losses and maximize your winning trades in whatever way that you see fit, that is the formula to becoming a consistently profitable trader. And you can have like a 40% win rate. You can lose more trades than you win. But the bottom line is, if you have a system that protects those profits and keeps the money in your account and means that you have very small losers but a few big winners, that is the secret formula to becoming a consistently profitable trader. And that all comes from having the confidence to follow your system even in those dark periods where you're in drawdown, you've hit losing streaks, because you know that probability dictates that you will lose a string of trades back to back sometimes. But that is where you need to be confident, pull through, and trust the system that you've built. And I think this is the last point now. Easier to measure results, learn, and improve. I think we're going to touch on this a bit later on with your spreadsheet you're going to pull up, Cass, which I'm looking forward to seeing. But why don't you break this down as far as how it's easier to measure results when you have a system, especially from the data front?
Yeah, well, if you have a clear process that you do over and over again, you can basically log the data. So for example, the trade you took, buy or sell trade, which things lined up. And if you're doing everything the same, it's very easy to measure your results. So you can basically see what's working, what isn't working, and you can basically ditch what isn't working or do the opposite. And also do more of what is working and find commonalities between your winning trades and find those between your losing trades. But if you don't have a process that you follow over and over again, this is very hard to do, and it all slows down your learning curve.
I think it's the learning curve is absolutely right. I feel like I wish I'd known about this much earlier when I started trading. I think
Yep.
people get very carried away with trading by feel and that sort of stuff. And I know that it can seem very daunting at first to build a system from scratch, especially when you don't know where to start. But hopefully by the end of this series we're putting together, you're going to understand perfectly well the sort of shell of what you need to do to build a system and how you can go out and use that to accelerate your trading to the next level. Because truth be told, if I learned this when I started trading, I would be much further on with my trading as I am now. And I don't want people to go the same path as me and waste the time that I did. I want traders at 𝗹𝗶 in general to do better than I did and have the right footing and the foundation to be successful in their careers. So when you got results that are easier to measure, I don't know who said it. I can't remember who said it, but somebody once said that if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And I think it's so true when it comes to trading. If you can't measure your results other than just the pips you've made, the profit you've made, and you can't measure it in terms of how you got there and what you did to make that profit in your account, then how can you ever expect to improve? So, yeah, I don't know who said that, but it stuck with me. And it's so true for trading as well. So let's move on to the next slide. We're going to talk about the opposite now of what happens if you don't develop a system. Now, we might have covered some of this already, but we're going to just go over this very briefly. So what happens if you don't develop a system? Cass, my friend, you're up. Let's go to the first point, which is
harder to measure your results and improve. Just like we said in the previous slide, if you're a fully discretionary trader and if you're drawing support, resistance lines, whatever you use, these things aren't really systemized. There is no black or white rules. You can make it a bit of a system, but it's not something you can program, and this makes it way harder to track and to measure the results, because this time you draw your support line like this, tomorrow you draw it like that, and there is no consistency there, and it makes it way harder to basically measure it and to improve. So that's why I believe developing a system is the right way to go.
I feel like when it comes to trend lines and support resistance, like I use them in a kind of an alternative way. I think of them as the way that other traders are thinking, the way that the 99% of traders are trading. They're looking at these areas and they're placing their stop losses and their take profits at these areas. But the thing with like trend lines, for example, you could draw a trend line in 100 different ways, and which one is price going to respect? It's just like, it's very varied in terms of where you can actually draw a trend line. So remember that when it comes to like that side of technical trading, it's going to respect your support and resistance. But what about the next trader who's drawn it differently? There's not one way of doing things, and that's something we want to avoid. We need to have a certain level of objectivity to our trading, where we know 100% what has caused us to get the results that we have done. And that is obviously why building a system is so important. Now, next point, what happens if you don't develop a system? It means that you have more room for error. Cass, take care of this one.
Yeah, like we spoke about, developing a system creates clarity, and the more clarity you have, the more the easier it is to know what you need to do, and the easier it is to follow your rules. And the less clarity you have, the more room for error there is. So creating that system makes sure you don't make much mistakes. For example, over the past 6 months, so this year of trading, I've made one mistake in trading. And that's because I trade fully systematic and I use a bit of discretion. I'd say around 5% of my trading is discretionary. The rest is all systematic. And I believe the more systematic it is, the less room for error and the more stable your results will be. Because if you're building a system, you are going to backtest, and the goal should be to trade the way you backtest it. And the less systematic you are, the more room for error you have, and the less reliable your backtest will be, and the less your trading performance will be.
That's right. I mean, you just got to look at the market and look at the industry as a whole and think about the rise of something like trading algorithms, trading robots. And we don't allow that at 𝗹𝗶 for a few different reasons. And in fact, it's across technology in general, the movement away from human interaction with things and trying to make things systematic, whether that's your algorithms on social media and other ways of doing that. Because we all know as humans that we have certain emotions, and when we exact those on them on things, it can make you less rational, you're not able to think straight. When you're in that trade, you've placed it just because, and you've got a massive candle against you. What do you do in that position? You're panicking. You don't understand. So you don't have the confidence to believe that this trade will pan out if you hold on to it. Now, that is all about system development and having that confidence. But ultimately, you are going to make mistakes as a trader, and your system's not going to be perfect. I mean, nobody's is. But the difference is that you can identify where it's going wrong and you can fix that. That is the most important thing. Right, next point. Lack of confidence. We're going to cover this one very quickly. I think we've already gone over this pretty much in detail. I think it's just about, you're just not going to have the confidence to not only hold trades and, behave like a professional trader. You're not going to have the confidence to continue with trading, because I've seen so many people who enter the markets and come about it in a completely wrong way. They lose money, they're scared of, and people who would have been fantastic Forex traders, people who would have been great Forex traders in their career if they just stuck around and learned to do things the right way, have been scared off from the markets just because they have had a bad experience trading by feel. They've got very emotional with the markets. They've lost a certain amount of money perhaps they're attached to, and they never come back again, which is the worst thing in the world. We want trading to be accessible to everybody, but we want to make sure that people are setting the right foundations for success for themselves. Now, I think the next point is no real edge. Cass, you can do this one very quickly. I think we've covered this pretty well already, but what do we mean by when we say no real edge?
What I mean by no real edge means it's just way harder to establish what your edge is if you're not following a system. If you're just trading support resistance or whatever, what you use, a more discretionary approach, it's always harder to define your edge. And if you have a system, it's way easier to define your real edge and to make money in the markets.
This is the key thing now. It's about application of what we're telling you. How you can actually approach it, and how is the right way to approach system development, and to make sure you're approaching it with the right mindset and idea. Now, first point is going to be, just make sure this is clicked on, how to approach system development, foundation of your career. So you're setting the seed now, and you're planting that seed to build a career within the markets, because that's what this is ultimately, and this is what it is for so many different people. Now, I can say from the people who trade by a system of rules have wildly more success than people who trade by feel. I feel like if you have a certain level of psychology and risk management in place, you can have some success trading by feel. But ultimately, that is not the best conditions for your growth as a trader. And if you put yourself in the right position from day one, and you set off this journey of building a system, much like we are both on now, you can have some results like you wouldn't believe. So it really is setting the right foundations and the right baseline to build this career within the Forex markets, and not go down the wrong path and waste time like perhaps I did. Perhaps I don't know about you, Cass, but that's what I've done.
Yep.
Trading by feel, trading by what I think is going to happen, not being able to compare my results. I just wish I'd come to this revelation sooner, and that's obviously what this series is all about. So let's go to the second point. Cass, please.
Yes. So when you are developing your system, it's very important to realize that past performance does not guarantee future performance. And everyone has seen it before, I think. The goal of developing your system is to find out what has worked in the past and use that data to trade in the future. But you have to realize that the future is never the same, and things can change in the market. Volatility has changed a lot last year in the markets. So you have to realize that it never will be the same. But if you have developed a system and you have tested over years and years of data, and you have a big enough sample size, you can really use that data to your advantage and make great decisions in the market. And also, to get back to point number one, the foundation of your career, a lot of people think that developing a system and testing it is boring and takes a lot of time. Well, it does take a lot of time, and you shouldn't expect to make money after your first year of trading or anything like that, because if you do any other job, it takes years and years of studying, and it's the same with trading. So it is something maybe boring for some people, but it's definitely worth it. And if you start correctly, then you will be well ahead in the future.
That's it. Now let's see. I think we've got a third point here, I'm pretty sure. analyzing repeating behavior and establishing rules. Now, we've covered a lot of this already. I'm just going to skim over this one very quickly. It's about identifying patterns of behavior and also identifying what has happened as a result of that behavior. And that is how you should look at building a system in general, just like you would do for anything else. Going back to the sport analogy, if the opponent player does this in boxing, if they swing a punch here, what will I do next? And how will that result to the overall winning conditions of the match? It's about understanding what you're doing, how you've done it, having the data to prove it, and some sort of measurement of what you've done, versus having no idea. Establishing those rules and analyzing the outcome of what you've done and how you can look to improve it in the future. If you traded exactly the same way on a higher time frame, how would that result? If you traded with your indicator on half the speed, half the period settings, if you had a take profit much slimmer, much closer to the web prices right now, how would that affect your bottom line? I think the nature of trading is there's so many different variables to touch on, which is why it takes a long time. But I can promise you now, if you actually put the time in, what other people are not prepared to, then you're going to really see results like people are not going to see. The average person is not going to be prepared to put the work in, which is where you can develop that edge amongst a group of people who don't actually put the work in to get where they want to be in the markets. Think it's just going to come to them. But as Kaz quite correctly says, you need to understand that this is a journey. If you wanted to study anything else, you wanted to get good at anything else, you wouldn't get good at it in a week. If you want to become a professional basketball player, you're not going to get good at that in a week. You've got to put years and years of practice in. And I'm not saying it should take years, but what I am saying is it's going to take time. And how much time that's going to take is up to your work ethic and how much work you're going to put into it. But understand that this is the superior way of trading. And I think that is, it goes without saying, that this is the way to trade. And if you set your foundations right, you're going to see the results in time. They will come, but you have to put that work in. And there's going to be points where it's more difficult than others. There's going to be points where you feel like giving up. But if you can just push through those times and really engage yourself to understand that there's some future here, and this will give you the earning opportunity for the rest of your life. If you're young and you've got time on your side, think about it like this. Let's say you're 25 years old. It means that if you put a couple of years into building a system, you've got the rest of your life, your adult life, which is what, 50, 60 years to enjoy the benefits of this system. So look at it in that way. Look at it as an investment in yourself and your overall financial status and career in the markets. Now, I'm not really sure. I think there might be one more point on this slide. We're going to the next slide. Cool. There we are. Right. So recap and preview to the next episode. We're just wrapping things up now. Cass, I'm going to let you take care of this slide, I think, in the most part, because I am talking way too much. Cass, there we go.
Yeah, to recap this entire session, basically a system creates clarity and confidence and consistency. It allows you to develop your own edge, and it allows you to measure results, which makes it way easier to learn from your mistakes and to become profitable in the markets. So that's why system development is key. And basically in the next episodes, we are going to talk about different ways to develop your own system. And in the next video, it's all about learning concepts, because developing a system is all done around concepts. And in the next session, we will be talking about what those concepts are, how you can use it, how you find concepts, etc.
Cool. Right, I think last point. I'm on to the next one. Excuse me. So that was episode 1 of why system development is key in trading. Now, guys, if you're interested to see more of this series, drop us a comment down below. Tell us what you'd like to see, some concepts that you might be interested in learning. I think it's fair to say that between me and Cass both, we've got a fair bit of experience in building a system, and we just want to help people who are watching this series do exactly the same thing, because we can speak from experience in saying that if we had done this earlier on, our trading careers would have been accelerated and we would have had success much sooner. Now, as always, it's a YouTube video, so I'm going to say like the video, drop us a comment about what you want to see, but comment anything else, what you think of the series. Subscribe to the main 𝗯𝗶𝗶 YouTube channel, but this time you get to subscribe somewhere else as well. Down in the description, the first link, you're going to find Cass's YouTube channel. He does a lot of great educational content like this. You can be seeing him on the channel here as well. If you like the way that he comes across, show him some love, subscribe to him as well. You're going to find that in the first link down below. I'm going to sign out here. Cass, do you have anything to say to round things up?
Well, I hope you guys learned a lot. And yeah, if there are any questions, just send a message or leave a comment down below, and we would love to help you out. And we are excited for these sessions, and speak to you guys in the next video.
More to come very soon, guys. Take care.